It was only going to be so long before we're all like, Caitlin Clark's got to be back.
You know, she better get back soon because out of sight, out of mind.
The moment Caitlin Clark stepped off the court, the WNBA began to crumble. Ratings plummeted, ticket prices collapsed, betting interest dried up. And now, she's back and the timing couldn't be more explosive. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about control, contracts, and the very future of the league. The numbers don't lie. Without her, the WNBA stalled. With her, the engine roars back to life. But as she returns to face the very team that broke her down, the world is watching. Because what happens next won't just define a season, it could define a legacy. Let's get into it. The moment Caitlin Clark was sidelined, the numbers began to nosedive. Almost overnight, the WNBA's record-breaking momentum came to a screeching halt. The league that had just been riding high on a surge of national attention suddenly looked quiet. According to Nielsen data, viewership for nationally televised WNBA games dropped by a staggering 55% after Caitlin's injury. And when you zoom in on her own team, the Indiana Fever, the drop is even more brutal. Before her injury, Fever games were averaging 1.8 million viewers. Without her, just 847,000. That's not just a dip in interest, it's a freefall. And the warning signs didn't stop there. Ticket resale values, once inflated by Clark's presence, absolutely collapsed. Seats that sold for hundreds before the injury were suddenly going for less than $10. Families canceled plans, fans demanded refunds. The ripple effect was immediate and undeniable. This wasn't just about basketball, it was about how much the product was worth when its biggest draw vanished. The Fever game against the Chicago Sky went from a high-demand event to an afterthought. The impact was so dramatic that even sports betting took a hit, with wagers on Fever games cut in half at major sports books. The message was clear. The casual fan didn't stick around. Not for the love of the game. Not for the league's other stars. Without Caitlin Clark, the spotlight dimmed, and the WNBA's fragile hold on mainstream relevance started to slip through its fingers. What makes this collapse even more damning is that it didn't take months to develop. It happened instantly. One injury, one absence. And suddenly, the numbers exposed the truth. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player, she is the attraction. But the fans weren't the only ones paying attention to this sharp decline. Behind the scenes, players were watching too, and some of them had plenty to say.
There was one quote in one of the front office sports articles: "It's unclear whether the teams will provide any compensation for fans who bought tickets to their games." And I was like, what?
As the backlash over Caitlin Clark's absence intensified, the WNBA's old guard decided to weigh in, not in the way anyone expected. Instead of empathy, they gave mockery. Sue Bird, a legend of the game, and her wife Megan Rapinoe, Olympic soccer icon, told fans to grow up after they voiced frustration over spending hundreds of dollars on tickets only to find out Clark wouldn't be playing. That wasn't just tone deaf, it was insulting. These weren't just casual complaints. Families rearranged schedules, booked hotels, and shelled out top dollar to see a rising star only to be dismissed, like spoiled children when things changed. Fans weren't demanding refunds because they were entitled. They were hurt. They felt cheated. And instead of support from the players who built the league, they got sarcasm. What Bird and Rapinoe missed is simple. Loyalty in sports isn't a given, it's earned. And these new fans had already shown extraordinary commitment. They didn't grow up on WNBA storylines or legacy players. They showed up for one reason: Caitlin Clark. She was their entry point, the spark that finally got them to care. Mocking that spark doesn't make them stronger fans, it drives them away. And that's the part the league seems to be underestimating. The WNBA didn't just lose a player when Clark got injured. It lost momentum, ticket revenue, betting action, and most importantly, trust. If this is how new supporters are treated, why would they stick around? It's a dangerous miscalculation. The very audience the league has spent decades trying to reach finally showed up, and instead of being welcomed, they were told to get over it. But here's the problem with pretending everything's fine. The numbers don't lie. Caitlin Clark's presence wasn't hype, it was measurable impact. And what happened next proved that her influence extended far beyond just ticket sales or fan disappointment. It shook the business itself. While fans argued and legends scoffed, the business side of the WNBA quietly began to unravel. It started with the sports books. When Caitlin Clark was playing, betting interest in Fever games surged. Casual and hardcore bettors alike were tuning in and placing wagers. But the moment she was ruled out, that energy collapsed. At Caesars Sportsbook alone, betting volume on Fever games dropped by nearly 50%. That's not just a dip in excitement, it's a signal that investors and odds makers knew exactly where the real value in the league was coming from. It didn't stop there. Sponsorship interest, which had finally begun picking up steam thanks to Clark's breakout appeal, cooled rapidly. Brands that were considering partnerships slowed negotiations. Media companies that were flooding social feeds with Clark highlights shifted to radio silence. The same outlets that once couldn't get enough of her step-back threes and fiery court presence now had little to say about the league she left behind. In a matter of weeks, the media buzz that had pushed WNBA coverage into mainstream conversations disappeared. Highlight reels dried up, broadcasts lost energy, the national spotlight flickered out. it became painfully obvious. This league's business model had started to lean heavily, not just symbolically, but financially on one player. And once she was out of the picture, so were the eyeballs, the headlines, and the dollars. This wasn't just a basketball problem, it was a business crisis. The excitement wasn't Organist, it was Caitlin fueled. And without her, even the most promising metrics fell flat. Sponsors don't bet on uncertainty. Media doesn't cover silence. And without Clark, the WNBA suddenly became both. This sharp drop in financial momentum should have triggered alarms across league offices. But instead of pivoting or responding strategically, the league found itself distracted by a different firestorm that was building fast and drawing just as much attention, for all the wrong reasons.
Injuries are a part of it. Again, I get it. It sucks. If you bought a ticket to see somebody and they're hurt, I get it. That is like a big bummer. But no, you would never say that about men's sports. If LeBron was out, or Steph Curry, or the big names were out for a couple weeks, they would never be like, oh, we're going to reimburse you guys. Sorry about that. Now you're just not taking the WNBA as a business. You're not seeing it as a business. So I'm like, yeah, she's hurt. It sucks. And the league will continue to go on.
As Caitlin Clark's absence created a vacuum in the WNBA spotlight, the league and media quickly pivoted to another rising name, Angel Reese. But instead of filling the gap, her performances only added fuel to the fire.
Angel Reese is actually an embarrassment for women's basketball. She is so unskilled. There are so many laughable videos. She's become a meme and a punchline, and people keep trying to run her out there like she's the best and the brightest. At some point, enough is going to be enough, and you think these girls would wise up and be like, this woman's actually a problem for us. She diminishes the game. Caitlin Clark elevates the game.
On paper, Reese had the charisma and backstory to become a star. But on the court, the reality told a different story: missed layups, inconsistent defense, and a general lack of polish that's impossible to ignore. Clips of her botching routine plays have gone viral, not because fans are out to get her, but because they can't understand why she's being pushed as the face of the league. Despite the glaring on-court issues, the media won't let go. Angel Reese is constantly praised, constantly highlighted, and constantly placed at the center of attention when her performance doesn't justify it. The result? Fans feel gaslit. They're watching one version of the game while being told another. It's frustrating, confusing, and frankly, insulting to the audience's intelligence. Then came the BET controversy. For the third year in a row, Angel Reese was named Sportswoman of the Year, beating out athletes with stronger resumes and more decorated careers like WNBA MVP and two-time champion Aja Wilson. The announcement left many fans baffled. How does a player struggling with fundamentals consistently walk away with the sport's top honors? Social media lit up with disbelief, and trust in the league's promotional decisions began to erode. This relentless overhyping isn't just a Reese problem, it's a WNBA problem. It sends the message that image outweighs impact, and hype matters more than hustle. Every missed shot, every questionable highlight reel only deepens the divide between what fans see and what they're told to believe. And all the while, another issue was brewing quietly in the background. Because while Reese struggled to live up to the spotlight, the team everyone once loved watching had suddenly lost its rhythm. The Indiana Fever weren't just losing games, they were losing their identity. Even before Caitlin Clark's injury, there were warning signs in Indiana. The Fever weren't playing with the flair or firepower fans expected from a team with the most talked about rookie in the country. Their offense was slow, deliberate, and to put it bluntly, boring. This wasn't the high-octane, free-flowing system Clark thrived in during her college years. It was clunky, stagnant, drained of rhythm, and the excitement that drew millions to the WNBA was fading just as quickly as it had arrived. The contrast was jarring. Clark was known for quick-trigger threes, daring passes, and transition brilliance, but the Fever system didn't capitalize on any of that. Instead of letting her run the floor and orchestrate fast breaks, the team often settled into half-court sets that crawled through possessions. The ball stuck, movement stalled, and the thrill of watching Clark do what she does best evaporated under a system that seemed determined to control rather than unleash her talent. It didn't take long for fans and analysts to start asking hard questions. Was head coach Stephanie White building a team around Clark, or was she forcing Clark to adapt to a system that didn't suit her? Critics began pointing out the team's preference for veteran presence and conservative play over speed and spontaneity. It felt like a misalignment from the top down, a team trying to tame its biggest asset instead of elevating her. For viewers tuning in, this wasn't the product they had signed up for. The Caitlin Clark phenomenon wasn't just about stats, it was about style. Her charisma, her creativity, her ability to electrify a game in seconds. And none of that was coming through with the way the Fever played. The fans didn't fall in love with this version of Indiana. But now, after weeks of frustration, everything changes with one single update. Caitlin Clark is back. After weeks of plummeting ratings, collapsing ticket sales, and a league grasping for momentum, Caitlin Clark is officially returning to the court, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. Her comeback game? A rematch against the New York Liberty, the very team that last handed her a loss, and the one involved in the WNBA's most-watched showdown this season. That game drew an eye-popping 3.3 million viewers. Now, with Clark healthy and the stakes higher than ever, analysts believe this rematch could break 4 million. This isn't just a comeback, it's a moment of reckoning. The narrative writes itself. The star who lifted the league out of obscurity is returning to reclaim the spotlight. Fans have been waiting, media outlets have been buzzing, and sports networks are gearing up for a potential record-setting event. But beyond the hype, something deeper is happening. This isn't just about redemption from an earlier loss. It's about resurrection, not just for Caitlin, but for the entire WNBA. For weeks, the conversation around the league has centered on what it lacks without her. Now it's time to see what happens when she's back. Will the game reclaim its spark? Will fans return in full force? Will the league finally lean into what's working instead of fighting it? Caitlin Clark isn't just stepping onto the court, she's stepping into a storm of expectations. Everyone's watching, the fans, the media, the sponsors, and the league's decision makers. And this return isn't just symbolic, it's a direct test of her value, of her ability to carry a team, and of the WNBA's willingness to build around the one player who's proven she can turn casuals into diehards. All eyes are on this game, but it's more than just a game. It's a measuring stick for what the future of women's basketball could be. And what's at risk if the league continues to ignore the obvious? Behind the scenes, there's a storm brewing that goes far beyond television ratings or missed layups. It's about money, power, and the future of the WNBA. With the league's collective bargaining agreement, CBA, negotiations on the horizon, every data point matters. And Caitlin Clark's injury, coupled with the steep ratings collapse that followed, has handed team owners a dangerous talking point. What happens if she gets hurt again? In the business world, that kind of uncertainty is fatal. Owners can now argue that the WNBA's recent surge in popularity was a fluke dependent on one player, too fragile to invest in long-term. The numbers back it up. Without Clark, viewership dropped by over 50%, ticket sales dried up, sponsorship buzz went cold. Suddenly, all the leverage players thought they had heading into these crucial negotiations? Gone. And this doesn't just affect Clark, it affects every player in the league. Fewer viewers mean less money from networks. Less excitement means slower brand growth. And if owners decide the league isn't financially stable enough for significant investment, it's the players who will pay the price literally. Lower salaries, fewer resources, and less control over their own futures. The sad part? It didn't have to be this way. The league gambled on the wrong narrative, propping up stars who couldn't deliver, chasing equality and exposure without acknowledging disparity in results, and underestimating just how much Clark mattered to the WNBA's ecosystem. Now, the entire league feels the fallout. The CBA battle is no longer a push for growth, it's a scramble to stop the bleeding. And unless leadership wakes up and starts building around what clearly works, that damage could be long-term. But it's not over, not yet. With Clark back and fans tuning in once more, there's still time to change course. The WNBA has a second chance. If they have the courage to take it, Caitlin Clark isn't just a breakout star, she's the engine driving the entire WNBA forward. Her presence proves that casual fans do matter, and when given something to rally around, they show up in massive numbers. The league's future won't be secured by ignoring this wave aid, will be built by embracing it. The WNBA must stop resisting what's obvious and start building around the momentum she's created. Because how they treat the one player pulling in, millions of fans will decide everything. Not just this season, but the legacy and longevity of women's basketball as a whole.